Building a Google Classroom Community. Model 4 application by Julia Hill for the American College of Education, course DL 5803. Professor Kennedy, due on September 19th, 2021. For my course, the audience is teachers who are new to Google Classroom. So not necessarily brand new to the profession, but perhaps they have not used Google Classroom before. They might be transferring from a different learning management system, or they may not have had a virtual component to their course prior. The length of the course is 2 sessions. They are an hour and a half each, so in total that would be 3 hours. And the format will be fully virtual. The subject matter is going to be regarding building a Google Classroom and learning how to integrate the different GAEF, the Google Apps for Education. So you can see here that there's a large variety of different Google for Education apps that are available. And we're going to take a look a little bit further on about how the learners are going to be able to have a little autonomy in choosing the apps that they would like. The measurable goals. By the end of the 2 sessions, the learners will be able to create their own Google Classroom page and integrate at least 3 different Google Apps for Education activities on their page. The 3 will be their choice. I did not want to be super specific regarding which 3 that they had to include because I think every course lends itself to different apps. So therefore, they don't have to use Google Drawing or Google Jamboard or Google Slides or Google Docs. They could choose to use the Google Spreadsheet, or they could choose to use a Google Form. So that's totally up to the learner and what best fits their course. For my course, I've utilized backward design. So the goal of backward design is driving the content and the process, and the activities are designed with the end in mind. Backward design ensures that the goals are being met by allowing them to be the driving force in the design. So therefore, the goal of having the students create their own Google Classroom, building that community, and incorporating 3 different Google for Education apps into their own Google Classroom is going to be the driving force into the different activities that are planned. This aligns well with constructivism. Constructivism views learning as a social construct. This theory sees the instructor as more of a guide to assist the learners as they experience firsthand. Therefore, it's important that the learner gets to try out what they're learning, not just read, watch, or listen to people talk about experiencing it. I found that this worked really well with my course because I'm having the students create and make their own, and the instructor is essentially there as a guide for them. So not necessarily that the instructor is just, preaching and just talking to them and then they have a quiz at the end, but that they're actually going to be able to have hands-on experience working with their own Google Classroom page. The different activities that are planned, obviously, the best way to learn would be to incorporate this in the instruction. So my plan is to have the instructor create a Google Classroom, and that's going to be the learning management system for this course. So the learners are going to join that Google Classroom to see what Google Classroom looks like and what it feels like as a student, and they're going to complete an introductory activity there using one of the Google for Education apps. This way they get that experience as a student and they get to see it from that viewpoint. Then the instructor is going to show the learners how to create their own Google Classroom by going step by step. They're going to give an overview of the top 5 Google apps for education. Even though there's more, I'm sure most of the learners are probably going to choose the most popular ones. So the overview of the top 5 will be very beneficial, and they're going to demonstrate how that can be integrated easily onto the classroom page. Then the students are going to have the opportunity to integrate at least 3 of the Google Apps for Education. They could choose other ones other than the 5 that were covered in the course, but they would essentially be on their own for navigating that app. At the end, they're going to pair up with a partner and they're going to join one another's Google Classroom page to give some feedback. Their assessment is going to be the design of the Google Classroom page in addition to the implementation of at least 3 Google Apps on that classroom page. And this will allow the learners flexibility to make the assessment applicable to their subject area and make the learning worthwhile. So I think that this would be a really great assessment and a great way to see that they've achieved the objective of the course. So let's take a look at the scenario. You, meaning I, review participation and grading analytics at the halfway point of a course you design and are now teaching. You notice 2 students are struggling with the Google Apps for Education implementation onto their Google Classroom page, and the assignments that they have submitted are lacking important information. So let's take a look at the analysis. Using this data, it's evident that there needs to be an in-course correction. Since I didn't specify exactly which 3 Google Apps for Education the students needed to use, it's time to send the students some additional information and have a follow-up meeting. So this is in line with Chickering and Gamson's 7 rules for undergraduate education. It is most important that the instructor goes back and clarifies with these 2 students. We have a quote here. The most important task for teachers in educational and instructional activities is to guide students. In fulfilling this function, teachers need to be clear and open to their students. As a result, students and teachers would understand each other better, know each other's expectations, and conduct the activities necessary to meet these expectations. Teachers are required to help students to develop their self-confidence and keep their goals at the highest level. It is also important for the students to feel that their teachers are always on their side. So from this quote, we can gather that the teachers need to be very clear in their expectations with their students, but at the same time, they also need to be very supportive and meet with the students if there's any discrepancies. So the explanation I have is that the 2 students are going to be provided with additional clarifying information regarding the expectations. The instructor, or myself, will schedule a time to go over said information individually with each of those 2 students. And the instructor will review their progress and check in regarding any questions or concerns they may have to make sure that they're implementing the Google Apps for Education properly onto their Google Classroom page. The instructor could even go as far as to walk through with them one of the 3 that they're going to implement to ensure that they've had that guiding help with the one, they have a model, and then that will help them get through the next 2. For my discussion, there are many ethical issues involved here. So we have a quote. Many ethical issues, evaluation of the sentiment, analysis technologies in the wild, possible applications, etc., need to be addressed when dealing with effective and behavioral corpus collection, annotation, and exploitation. As we've discussed, this is a mock scenario. So we don't actually have these results and we don't have this analysis. But there are a lot of variables that could come into play if this were to be occurring in a course. So you need to be mindful of all of those variables and make sure you're being ethical in your collection of the data. And here are my references for this assignment. Thank you so much for your time.